So welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us for today's Hot Topic session. My name is Keith Wilson. I'm the immediate past chair of the North State BIA's Associates Council, and I'll be helping moderate the discussion this morning. This is our second of three planned Hot Topic sessions the Associates Council is offering this year. Today's Hot Topic is a report on housing creators and killers, brought to you by Dan Dunmore, President and CEO of the California Building Industry Association. Dan is a respected and recognized leader, strongly committed to ensuring that the CBIA continues to be the leading voice of housing in California and supports efforts to ensure the American dream of home ownership is attainable for all Californians. Dan has graciously provided many insightful updates for us over the years, and we thank you for joining us again today to speak on a very serious and current topic. Before we get started, I wanted to recognize and thank our sponsors for today's Hot Topic session. Rick, formerly known as Rick Engineering Company, and Wood Rogers, both of whom stepped up as banner sponsors. These events simply don't happen without the support of our generous sponsors, so a big thank you to both Rick and Wood Rogers for your support today. Before starting the conversation, a couple notes. I wanted to give everyone on this call a quick reminder of a couple great events coming up soon that we hope you plan to sponsor and or attend. On June 26th, next week, from 4:30 to 8 p.m., the Associates Council is holding our annual Cornhole Tournament and Connections Mixer, this year at In Shape Fitness in Rockland. Sponsorships are still available, and even though I'm pretty sure teams are sold out, we do still have $45 spectator/mingler tickets available, so consider attending and trash talking your friends who may be participating, which is probably what I'm going to be doing. Also then on July 18th from 5 to 9 p.m., the Building Careers Foundation is going to be holding a benefit poker tournament at the Rockland Event Center. Premium sponsorships, single player, and dinner only tickets are available. So for more information and registration for both of these events, please go to the North State BIA's events calendar. All right. With that, I'm going to turn the discussion over to Dan. Dan, thanks for joining us. I doubt you'll be needing too many prompts for this subject. It's kind of your thing. But I do have a few questions to get us started, if it's okay.
Of course, jump right in, Keith.
The number one question that we had to start was, can we start with an update on fire insurance and its effect on our industry?
Yeah, you bet. This is an important issue. Before I jump in there, just again, thank you for including me in this discussion. I really, really appreciate our partnership, CBIA, with North State BIA. Tim and his team are amazing, and we work well together. So a shout out to both your elected leadership and your staff leadership for our great collaborative spirit and just years of relationship. Tim and I go back to his prior life as well. So good to have this continuing leadership role for the building industry. To the question on insurance, interestingly enough, our members, when we do a survey at the beginning of the year, listed this as the top issue of greatest concern to being able to complete and build homes. There are a lot of others, which I can touch on, but this one in particular, because as you know, if you've been spending years and years to get a project approved and titled, you finally build a home and then you go to sell it and you find, wow, I can't find insurance. That's probably the worst day of your career in that context, because the home's completed, you've got somebody who wants to buy it, the home, and then you're struggling to find coverage. So very, very important issue for us. So where we are in this, as complicated as this issue is, it really isn't. I say this as somebody who worked with the insurance industry and for the insurance industry for decades before this job. But insurance works well if you have it, basically it's this simple. If you have a risk, what is the cost it takes to secure that risk? If you collect enough premium to secure it in mass, you can effectively stay solvent. If you collect too little premium, you become insolvent. And your only way of minimizing your solvency is to stop selling. And then if it's really bad solvency situation, to start non-renewing your higher risk policies. And pretty much California has a prior approval state, which in English means you have to get the elected insurance commissioner who wants to run for higher office to give you rate increases. And so far, that's been a difficult challenge. And Ricardo Lara chose, and his predecessor, who I think many of you know, Dave Jones, for 8 years, really didn't want to give any rate increases. Lara, the first 4 or 5 years, didn't want to as well. So you can imagine if you hadn't raised the cost of building a home for 13 years, and you had to keep the same price you did in 2012, well, you'd be bankrupt, or at least unwilling to build homes too. So that's kind of a quick summary of the problem. The solution, we've got two solutions we're working on. One is the immediate, And that is you can get insurance coverage through this thing called the FAIR Plan, the Fair Access to Insurance Requirement Program. And that's the backstop when the market starts to not work. So we've been working to strengthen that. We've sponsored a bill, AB 226, by members Calderon and Alvarez, just to strengthen the FAIR Plan because it's the fastest growing, most insolvent company in California right now. It's got $599 billion in exposure. That's a B, and has 300 million, that's an M, in surplus. So as we saw these horrible fires we had in Southern California, the FAIR Plan was instantly out of money. Now, the good news is when the FAIR Plan runs out of money, it's backed up by the entire insurance industry, like a Farmers, Allstate, State Farm. So there's plenty of capital, and $1 billion was infused back into the FAIR Plan within 30 days once they ran out of money. So it does pay claims and will continue to pay claims regardless of its financial health. But the faster the FAIR Plan grows, the more it signals the market's not working. So the first thing we're doing is strengthening the FAIR Plan so that the primary reason why we're doing that is the only way, as I mentioned, an insurer can reduce their exposure is to non-renew. And non-renewing policies is really bad. It also means the only way they can reduce their exposure is not selling new policies. We need those new policies when we sell a new home. On the longer term strategy, we are working with Commissioner Lara, who has come up with what's called the Sustainable Insurance Strategy. I won't get into all the details, but effectively it restructures the regulatory schematic of California to fit the 21st century. We're the only state in the nation that doesn't allow for true assessment of cost. Two key factors: reinsurance, which is the backup system for private insurers. It's like insurance for insurance companies. That's how you spread your risk. Every state in the nation, not only do they allow for that cost to be included in rates, they demand that there be more reinsurance because that's how companies stay more solvent. They spread the risk around the world, not just around the US. The other is to take into account what's called catastrophe modeling. And we're, again, the only state in the nation that doesn't allow for the use of that tool. And so what that really means is you can't plan for risk for the future, which by definition is what happens with insurance. It's a risk for the future. So we're still kind of in the dark ages in California. The commissioner is moving to change this. These new systems or these new rate concepts go into effect on July 1st. Our hope is more companies will come back once they can move through this rate review process and solve this problem. So big issue for all of our members, and something that we are continuing to focus on. Our Fair Plan Fixed bill is up next Wednesday in the Senate Insurance Committee. We're hopeful it gets to the governor. And I'll stop there, Keith, just to make sure we have time for a lot more
Yeah,
issues.
thanks, Dan. And I had a kind of a follow-up related to the subject of fires. If you can give us any insight into how the governor's office is viewing CEQA and housing issues these days, given his actions relative to the LA wildfires, which is the most recent.
Yeah, and CEQA is obviously one of the very key challenges for doing business as a home builder and a land developer. So from the governor's perspective, when the fires hit in January, I quietly reached out to the governor's senior staff, and both of my kind of took off my CBIA hat. And for those who don't know, I worked for Governor Schwarzenegger for a few years and oversaw the entire government for him. His primary focus for me on a daily basis was every morning I would reach out to the Office of Emergency Services to see if there were any disasters or fires or any other issues. So this is something that's ingrained in my brain. And I say that because I know what it takes to rebuild after a disaster, both from the eyes of an insurer, governor, of course, from a home builder. So the first thing I went to the governor's office was to say, you've got to start waiving CEQA, you got to waive the Coastal Act, and you've got to create a permit system that's based in reality to insurance coverage. An insurer commits to you in contract to rebuild your home to like, kind, and quality, which sounds great until you have a 1947 bungalow in Altadena and you still have to do all these code upgrades and all these other issues. So picking the right codes can be, helpful. Like fire codes aren't that much more expensive. Picking all the energy efficiency codes, not that they're bad per se, but if you have insurance just to return your home to like quality, you're going to run out of money really fast. So we worked on those three key areas: repealing or basically putting on hold CEQA, putting on hold the Coastal Act, and coming up with moderate but still strong codes that will protect from future fires. Governor acted on the first two recommendations immediately. He has yet to finalize what he wants to do on codes. As recently as last Friday, I was talking to his team, and they're still trying to figure out where to move on that. The politics of it are to push for 2025 codes. The insurance coverage is to push for the 2012 codes. because that includes all the fire stuff, but doesn't mandate solar and R6D and more insulation and all those things, which are good to have, but cost a lot of money. So that's how we worked with the governor. Last thing I'll say, the governor in his budget for this year, which today's the 20th, so he has to finalize it by July 1st, but he put in two CEQA reform bills, one by Senator Weiner, one by Assemblymember Wicks. And he did that because he can use the budget to leverage, everything else you need in the budget. Well, if you want everything else, you got to vote for my CEQA bills. So we are hopeful there'll be some modest reforms. Why do I say modest? We're likely they'll require some sort of wage rate, which in English means higher wages. So hoping those wage rates are not prevailing wage, but something more like residential wage or more limited in cost, because prevailing wage adds about 85,000 a door, and we generally don't use it unless it's a legally defined affordable housing. So, but the good news is the governor is recognizing CEQA as an issue. He's leveraging the budget to accomplish some of that. So both in the firestorms and on just the legislative stuff, Keith, those are two areas where he's becoming to realize that CEQA is one of the major impediments to achieving our housing goals.
Yeah. What are the most significant legislative trends in Sacramento you're seeing right now that you think are going to have the biggest impact, be it positive or negative? I know you have a listing on your website currently on housing production in the next, 1 to 2 years.
Yeah, so and that is our focus this year. So we obviously play defense, but let's start positive. So last year, before all these fires, there was a recognition by who happened to be our legislator of the year, Assembly Member Buffy Wicks from the Berkeley, Oakland area, that there's two key impediments that uniquely position California as the hardest place to build. There's many challenges, but two in particular, how long it takes to build and how much the impact fees are. And so to Buffy Wick's credit, she held a bunch of hearings on permit reform, the process for getting through entitlement to what I call to a yes vote with the city council or board of supervisors. And then the challenge post yes vote, just to getting to build. So getting to yes, getting to build. So she held a number of hearings. We participated directly in those. And it wasn't just on housing. Permit reforms are challenging for building water treatment facilities or transmission lines or infrastructure. So there are 22 permit reform bills that are in the legislature right now. It's called the fast track group of bills. We were asked to carry 7 of those, and we were asked to write 7 of those. And so we have come up with 7 measures that do different things, like for those of you who like Senate Bill 330, how that helps you build on the local level, it's applying SB 330 to all state regulatory agencies. So once you start a project, the state modifies its regulations after you start, you get to stay with the original state regulations at the time you started your project. Other ones are just limiting plan checks to 2. Some of them are stopping, or I should say reducing shot clocks from 90 to 45 days. Another one, we call it the bait and switch, or the sandbagging issue, where a city moves in and gives some very fair, reasonable requirements for building homes and gets their RENA approved, and then a week later they come up with inclusionary zoning and fees for affordable housing and higher fees for parks as a way to basically get the approval, and then, as we say, sandbag the state and come back with pretty much a housing moratorium. So we have a number of bills like that, and as Keith said, you want to get into more detail, you can go to our website, but we see that as one of the key trends on the positive side. So far, these bills have moved forward. We have moved one bill from the Senate to the Assembly, and now we've moved the other 6 from the Assembly to the Senate. We are hopeful we can move all these to the governor's desk and get them signed. So on the negative side, just quickly, there's a lot of bills in this space. I'm pleased to say that most of them we've been able to put on hold, but not all of them. There's a bill to expand vehicle miles travel fees, pretty much on everything that North State builds. I know you do some infill, but anything that's outside of downtown Sacramento, you would have to pay a fee, and this will blow your mind. So obviously this is a massively horrible bill. A fee ranging from $400 a door to, are you ready for this? $343,000 per door.
Yeah.
Not per project, per door. So obviously our heads are exploding. We're doing a full court press on this. The good news is labor's on our side on this one, because these impact fees would also impact all the transportation, road systems, water systems that they build. So we are hopeful this will get tied up or just approved, improved to the point where it's a voluntary concept, where if you want to enter into this relationship with the local authority, you may on your own terms. And if it works to make it for a quicker BMT process, you choose it. If it doesn't, then you just go through the normal process. But that gives you, I mean, the idea behind that is we're running out of money for affordable housing, so let's just tax market rate builders who don't build downtown. And so that's, I guess it's a solution for a few, and it destroys housing for, well, about 97% of California. There's one other bill that's mentioned we did put on hold. It's a bill that would expand the tribal consult process on any of your
Two,
projects.
AB
And
52.
effectively, it would expand it to the point where you would have to give your land back to the tribe of interest if, in fact, there were any human remains found on your job site. You just have to give a perimeter of land just right back to the tribes, and you couldn't build on it. Needless to say, that would make building housing in California pretty much impossible. So that bill's on hold, can be brought up in January. But those are two examples of some of the challenge. We have some really good news and we have some really serious challenges, Keith. And that's just an example of what we're looking at.
Thanks, Dan. Shifting a little bit, I know locally, most of us have some interest in this. And can you give us your view on any of the progress with PG&E over the last few years?
Well, that too. So this is something we've really partnered well with North State BIA on, and also Bay Area BIA, but particularly North State. Jeff Short and has really made this his priority. And it's hard to believe this, but a few years ago, we started this process meeting with Patty Poppy, the CEO of PG&E, and really just brought to her attention that numerous attempts have been made to get something done here, and nothing really happened. So to her credit, she sat down and listened to us. And one of our board members and your board members, Michael LaFortune, was in that first meeting, and he and Don Hofer from Shea Homes did an outstanding job of walking the CEO through the challenges we face. And post that meeting, Michael continues to be involved, Jeff on the staff side, and I know that this is a big issue for Tim Murphy as well. So we have seen progress here. It's not 100%, but we went from basically 5% on time project dynamics with PG&E up to about 45%. We had Patty speak to our PCBC leader to leader event last week, and continuing to work to hold her accountable, but also to make additional progress. Our greatest success here is when we get a call from a builder or from Jeff directly saying, hey, something's stuck. We got people ready to move in. We've created, we call it whack-a-mole, but that's our inside term. But something pops up that's not good, we go fix it. But we have found a process to move through that impediment, and that has worked very effectively and saved our mutual membership millions of dollars in delays. So we're moving in the right direction, Keith. It's better. It can be much better. And so we're going to stay on this until you say, yeah, not a big issue for us. But until then, this will continue to be a shared priority for North State and CBIA.
Well, then let's try to shift to something positive. I'll ask a kind of general question overall. And do you see any legislative proposals as most promising in the upcoming months or years for increasing housing supply? You talked a little bit about permit streamlining. I know the subject of ADU expansion or funding, incentives is out there, but can you speak to any of that?
Yeah, so what we're trying to do is, and especially in the North State area, the whole issue of insurance is big. And the primary reason why it's big is because the issue of fire safety and fire preparedness. And so what we are doing is working very effectively on a number of fronts, obviously trying to get the insurance industry to come back in, but working with the Insurance Institute for Business and Home Safety, which is a nonprofit organization that talks about how to build fire-safe homes, also wind-safe homes, but fortunately we haven't had a lot of hurricanes here. And so we're working with the state fire marshal, the Board of Forestry, the Insurance Institute for Business and Home Safety, and we believe that the master plan communities that North State BIA members are building are being built to such a high standard that their chance of burning or an urban conflagration, as it's called, are almost zero so far. And I knock on wood when I say this, there's not a single master plan community built since the new fire codes of 2010 that have suffered from these horrific fires. And even when a standalone new home is built in an old neighborhood like Paradise, and the old neighborhoods, 98% of the homes burned down that were built before 2010, only 50% burned down, even if they were adjacent to old stock. So we believe that the houses that our mutual members are building have achieved that. So that fire safety standard. So we're working very diligently on that one to help us in the insurance piece, but also to build communities that don't burn. And the fire safety component, unlike the energy efficiency, the fire safety is relatively cost effective. We don't putting on a Class A roof or putting dual pane windows. I don't know of a member who doesn't use dual pane windows other than maybe in very remote areas of the state. So this is something that we already have built into our lexicon, but we can really give a sense of security to political leaders, to insurance companies, to fire departments, the state fire marshal. So that will help us build, especially in the North State area. And that's something we're excited about. Just one last thing that I think is helpful as we are working on an issue that's important, and I know that Chris Norham has been very helpful on this because of his relationships with Congressmember Matsui. But as you know, there's this challenge we face because of a lawsuit on LOMARS and CLOMARS, which in English means paying more for flood insurance when you shouldn't. And so I'm pleased to say that Ms. Matsui and Mr. Lamalfa have co-sponsored a bill just a week and a half ago to address this issue and take away the higher cost of flood insurance. And so I'm hopeful that this measure, it's House Resolution 3800, which was recently introduced, and bipartisan sponsorship, which is really rare in DC, will move forward. And because we've done a good job in Sacramento, thanks to Ms. Matsui and all of our builders to build flood-safe homes, keep the insurance costs for flood out of the equation. So those are some areas of progress, Keith, and I appreciate again this partnership. Chris used to work for Ms. Matsui, and she's been a champion on this issue. I'm pleased to say last week we picked up two more bipartisan co-authors, Congressmember Kim, a Republican in Orange County, and Brad Sherman, a Democrat from Woodland Hills. So we're expanding this bill, and there's very, very few bills in the Congress that are bipartisan, but this is one that is, and I have to thank Chris for his partnership on this as well.
We got a couple quick questions in chat that I'm going to try to get to real quickly. Letha Clark from USA Properties Fund is asking if you can speak to AB 306, a hold on building code updates and its potential impact on housing development.
You bet. This is a bill that actually the Speaker of the Assembly came up with. A lot of people think was our idea, and I mean, it's a great idea, but it is something the Speaker came forward because after the fires, he was afraid if we keep on adding codes requirements during the next 5-6 years when it takes to rebuild LA, that more and more people will be priced out of their homes. So it's a bill that pushes the pause button on our codes in California, our code upgrade system, for 6 years. So it would freeze in place all the codes through 2025, but then after 2025 until 2031, no additional code modifications could be made. We were very surprised that the Speaker introduced this. The bill passed out of the Assembly 71-0, which is mind-blowing because there's probably 50 environmental groups opposed to it. And the International Co-Council is opposed to it because it means they can't keep on publishing books. So we're hopeful that this does move forward. We work very diligent daily on the codes. Chris Ochoa in our office and former colleague Bob Raymer as a consultant are the experts in the nation on codes. So we're very sophisticated in this space, but we would like to have a pause, not on the fire safety side, which we think we now have the highest standards, but on the energy efficiency side, moving to all electric homes, forced battery storage. We want all that to stay voluntary for the next foreseeable future. So this will hopefully pause mandatory changes to the codes. Nothing prohibits a builder from building to a higher standard, but we think this pause is needed because we do have the toughest codes in the nation by a factor of 5. And also because of fire victims, we will see, as you know, from Paradise, we will see a lot of people leave if they have to keep on upgrading their code system. So that's AB 306, and it's in the Senate, and we'll see if it gets to the governor.
Dan, thank you so much.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank Dan for complimenting our North State volunteer leadership and my exceptional team at North State BIA. And I really would like to reciprocate. Dan's leadership and his CBI team are exceptional. As you heard, that they have quickly strategized and killed or at least neutered the list of housing killers that were introduced in the legislature this year. And I just want to say I can attest that having a strong partner at the state level really benefits you, our members. we're able to put a 1-2 punch to knock out the truly horrible proposals that pop up too frequently at the local and state levels of government. But it's an honor working with Dan and his team. They really are outstanding advocates to improve the climate for attainable housing in California. So Dan, thank you very much.
Thank you, Tim. Appreciate that very much.
So I think it's about time to wrap it up. I wanted to mention, I know Angela was asking this question that's important for all of us. What can we be doing as NSBIA members to support you, Dan?
Well, do what you continue to do. I mean, build beautiful home projects, show this community, the greater Sacramento region, how important home building is. Appreciated the introduction, Keith, about my desire to see more and more Californians participate and have access to the American dream, which I believe is, owning a home. Was raised by home builders and land developers. So one, just continue to do what you do in the communities, build beautiful communities. That just speaks volumes for industry. Two, when you're asked to participate politically, please do so. You have a great PAC and you participate very heavily in races. But as you know, on the city council, you had made a profound change in Sacramento City Council, electing solid people. That changes everything for your building ability. So as much as somebody twisting your arm for PAC contribution may seem a little uncomfortable, it really helps you build more. And then third, continue to support local and state BIAs. I mean, you all voluntarily do this, and I commend you. So continue to do it. When we ask you to step up and write a note to a local assembly member or a Congress member, please do so, because your vote matters to that man or woman. And so just continue to do what you do, and just don't let up, because we are making progress. We are.
All right. Dan, thank you so much for your time. Super appreciate all the input. And I hope everybody has a great weekend. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you very much. I always appreciate you. Hope you and Leilani have a wonderful weekend.
You too, Angela. Thanks, Tim. Thanks,
Thank you,
everybody.
Dan. Appreciate
Bye,
it.
everybody. Thank you. Thanks for being a member. And thanks to our sponsors as well. Have a great weekend. Bye.